yeah, top and tail it later. Okay,
yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So we've got quite a few people coming in. That's good. Yeah, it was nice to have Ellie contribute to our last session.
Oh, she's very cute. How old is she?
4, just gone 4. But we've
lovely.
We're locking down this week because she's having a small operation on her ear next week. So we're all stuck in the house for the week. So it's possibly the worst week we could lock down. But
oh yeah, because you're sort of in this 24/7, aren't you?
yeah. Oh, so good.
I think the little kids are fascinated in kind of talking to a screen, and I know with my nieces they were kind of they didn't really understand that I knew people that they didn't know. who are these people that we don't know? Let's work.
I know them.
Right, I'll let you get going, Mike.
Great stuff. Okay, we're just about 4 o'clock then, so we'll get going. Just to say, this session is being recorded, so if you need to recap it or you missed the start, then it is available, and it will be available via our festival website. I'd also say, if you have any calendar invites or reminders set up for events for this week, please delete those and go via the festival site, as we've had a rejig of some of the WebEx links, so you may end up going to the wrong session if you don't go via the website. So just to make that point before we get started. So my name's Mike Wilson. I'm a senior lecturer in digital learning and innovation with academic development. And with me, I have Amy Barlow, Head of Academic Development.
Hi, everyone.
And today we're going to look at the using the Moodle template that's been developed since lockdown and kind of the process behind that. So the learning outcomes for the session are that by the end you'll be able to identify different delivery methods for teaching at distance, predominantly flipped and blended, and what those mean and how they link together. You'll understand how to use the UOP module template. You'll be able to describe how regular knowledge check activities can improve distance learning. And finally, identify which key components of online teaching can be retained when face-to-face teaching resumes. More than happy to take questions as we go through. I would ask that if you could mute your mics as we work through, though. And if you ask a question via the chat, we'll relay that through as we go, or we'll answer it at the end, because we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end of the session as well. Okay. So here's a quick outline of what we'll cover in the session. We'll have a quick introduction, which we're really doing at the moment. Then I'll hand over to Amy to talk about the guiding principles which the template was designed against. We'll look at the rollover and template workflow process in terms of you getting access to the template. Then we'll spend the most of our time looking at the template itself, kind of how it works, what's involved, how it all fits together, how you can vary it up, and how flexible it is. And that will really lead us onto the styles that are available to you, and that flexibility, and how you adjust the blend of the template to help deliver face-to-face sessions when that happens, and potentially flip back to fully online if you need to, or if we are locked down again at any point. Okay, before we get started though, we're going to do a quick activity which is available from this link here. I'm just going to put that link in the chat. Okay, so I'll just type the link, not in the chat window, to everyone. So we're using a package called Padlet, an online platform called Padlet, to do this activity. And it's really for me to kind of gauge what you need most help with. So in the bottom right hand corner of the link I've just put in the chat, you'll find a pink circle with a plus in it, and let you add a post. So could you tell me, in terms of teaching online, what do you need most help with? And I'll try to cover those points in the session and try and kind of point towards those points. Just while I adjust the typo. Okay, so we've got some posts coming through already. Thank you very much for that. So how to make sessions interactive, encourage student engagement. Yeah, that was very much a key point in this morning's session as well. Okay, transforming old school lecture slides to flipped learning. That's a good one. Two flips. Okay, I've got a good idea for that one. How to roll over video panels into the new template. Yep, we can cover that. We've got a number of tools to do that. Okay, how to use books and video content in an exciting way. I'll definitely cover that. There's we've got some news in terms of a new video recording package called Panopto, which will really help with that as well. So when we get to the book section, I'll flesh out what I mean, how Panopto can be used in conjunction with books to make it very engaging and exciting. Move some of these over. So if I'm moving one you're working on, I'll put them into the center a bit, so they're not overlapping. Okay. Light touch asynchronous discussion activities. That's a very good one. Asynchronous. I mean, we're actually using a light touch asynchronous discussion activity right now. And it's worth saying that very soon we'll have a site license for Padlet. It's very good as an icebreaker and for summarising topics. So as you see, it's very light touch. It's very easy for people to get in and post a comment that everyone can see. So not being the only answer to that question, but it is an answer to the what activities can we use which are light touch and asynchronous. This can be delivered as synchronous as we're doing at the moment, but also asynchronous as in leaving the link available for students to feedback at any point. My colleague Andy, they've mentioned in the previous session that he just has a link to a Padlet board at the top of his Moodle site, which says any feedback. Basically, at any point, students can drop in and leave a comment about the course, and just helps him improve his Moodle course. There we go. Okay, how to know when to stop. There are a lot of new options, but how to choose a few good horses to stay sane. Yeah, that's a very fair point. Okay, great stuff. There's loads of things I can feedback on as we go through, and I'll say I've made notes on those, and I'll take particular interest, attention, sorry, to bits as we go through. So thank you very much for contributing to that. Feel free to add more if you want to as well. So right, let's get back to our slides. So we've got some idea of what to concentrate on. I'll just hand over now to Amy, who will talk about the principles of blended learning that we developed to support this.
That's great, thanks Mike. Just a quick note for some of you who have just joined to mute your microphone because it will naturally go to the video which is producing any noise. So I can see a couple of you just need to mute if that's okay. It will help us with the quality. Okay, so these are our principles of blended learning, and they're guiding kind of overarching principles. This is nothing that we're not already doing, but we felt it was important in this new situation we find ourselves in to help to prioritise certain elements. So we've got these principles to help us to kind of communicate what we'd like you to prioritise, and the template is made to assist all of this. So we have the top principle there, which is pedagogy led, and that basically means that we're not expecting everybody to learn a million different tools, and I think it can feel quite overwhelming sometimes that you feel like you need to learn everything, and then when you've learned it, you'll be able to choose what's best for you. We're actually saying start with how you teach and what you do and what you would do normally, and we can help you to translate that into the online equivalent, and also to think about how that will kind of be different as we go forward. We've made huge leaps in accessibility because of this increase in digital technology. One being that we are now able to create videos with captioning, which is fantastic. So our second principle there is about inclusive study, which includes accessibility. It also includes making sure that a diverse group of students are catered for. And our third principle is really about talking to students, something which you will do and have been doing, but we want you to talk to them about how they learn online and what works for them and what doesn't work, and to adapt accordingly. So this is just kind of flagging up that probably weekly you'd want to be talking to your students about how they're finding the structure and if there's anything that they need help with, what's working. And as I said, this is something that we have been doing. We're doing very well as an institution, and we just want to continue to be aspirational with what we want to deliver. So we've got these 4 principles, which are by no means an exhaustive list, but if you were going to focus your attention in any areas, these would be the areas that we would like sort of front and centre as we go through. So that's enough for me. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the template. The only thing that I would like to highlight is that this is a flexible recommended delivery model. We're not going to tell you how to teach, what order to do it in. What we're trying to do with the template is to make sure that when the students go into their multiple modules, and in some cases modules that are fully online in teaching block 1, they see something that's similar, that's recognisable, and they're able to kind of follow it through. So I think where we work in one module, or perhaps a couple of modules, the students are getting that course level experience, and anything we can do to help them with signposting and following their kind of study activities is beneficial. Okay, I'll hand back to you, Mike.
Great stuff, thank you. Okay then. I'm going to flip things around very, very slightly before we get into the template itself. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what flipped delivery means, because it really does is the main mechanism for delivering the template. Flipped delivery is a type of blended learning. In this instance, recorded lectures. These are up front, so the students work on those in their own time, and then they come together for the collaborative element of the module every week. So it really optimises how students spend their time. Students don't need to be sat together all at the same time absorbing all the lecture materials. They can do that in their own time whenever they want to. The real key part is getting students together to collaborate, and that's really where you get the most engagement and the most kind of interaction from students. So that's really what flipped delivery means. It's kind of just flipping when and how you deliver materials. When we talk about blended learning, so flipped is a version of blended learning, but the blend in this case really concerns which elements are taught face-to-face and which are taught online. So there's a very obvious point where we can adjust that blend in that the group collaboration activity, which I'll talk about in a minute, is a key point that we can deliver that face to face if we're able to, or we can deliver that online synchronously using tools like WebEx and Google Meet if we need to, if we ever have to get locked down again. So that's what we mean by flipped and blended in this context. So I'm now going to link to one of the support sites which we'll cover in this session, and this is hopefully you've had a chance to see this already, but this is the preparing for teaching in a blended learning context site that we put together to support the principles, the template, and some other well-being and inclusivity points that we'd like to communicate to you. So I'd really recommend you spend some time, have a look at the site. It's got some really good resources on there, and also a glossary. So if anything I say doesn't really make sense to you and you want to look it up, please go and have a look at the glossary of terminology, and it really will unpack that a bit. So what we're seeing on this page is the workflow for the template and your Moodle modules. Every summer we roll over your Moodle modules, so we back up last year's module onto our archive site, and we make your module available for edits for the coming academic year. It's really important that you contact your local online course developer to get access to the rollover process. And once that's finished, the UOP module template tool will be applied to your module. And this is a page which we'll go into in a second, which will allow you to choose the template which best fits your module. Once that's applied at stage 3, you can then move on to adapting and developing your module content to suit online delivery. Okay, so now I will take you to Moodle and show you that in practice, the practice I've just talked about. And there I am. Do bear with me just a second. Complete demo, there we are. Okay, so my module has been rolled over and I've been dropped to the front page of my module. So at the moment, it gives me the guidance to talk to my online course developer. That can't be stressed enough. A link to the site that I just spoke about, the Preparing to Teach in an Online Blended Learning Context. And importantly, your choice of what template to use. In the majority of cases, so the high 90% of cases, we'd recommend that you use the UOP module template. And this is really just guidance about how to teach online with a flipped delivery mechanism in place, because the feedback we had from staff was that that was really key. They wanted one firm message about what they should be doing to teach effectively online for teaching block 1, and I'll take you through that in detail. There is another option though. If you're an experienced online teacher, you've done it a lot, you've got a style and approach that you would normally take, as a lot of departments will, predominantly departments like ICJS that teach a lot of distance modules. Then there's also an additional format here, which will just apply a weekly format to your module, because that really is key. Most modules at the moment are topics based. Work students through the and telegraph those activities. So switching those to a weekly format really helps you to provide that signposting easily without students having to search around in topics for particular activities. So in the majority of cases, please use the module template. I'm going to press the preview link here because that will show me what the template will look like once I've finished adding content. So we've got 3 weeks of content here, done in various ways, just to show you how it could be structured using different activities and approaches. And I'm conscious that one of the pieces of feedback was that you don't want to have too many variables, too many different activities. So if that's the case, then just pick the first one. The first one is, and we do have different ways of doing the same thing. It is, if you really want to get engagement, as another one of the pieces of feedback asked for, if you want students to be engaged, you will notice after about 3 or 4 weeks of doing the same thing, engagement will drop off. So it's important to use a variation of activities and mix it up a bit. But that can come in line with your own confidence. As you kind of gain confidence with doing it after a few weeks, then experiment and maybe try doing things in a different way. So this module will walk you through a few different ways of doing the same thing. So spend some time. I will come back to this this module in a minute, but I first want to show you what the template will look like once it's applied. So once I'm happy with that preview, I'll press the Use Template button. And my module will then have 16 weeks added to the top, which represent the weeks within teaching block 1. So once that's finished, if I look at the site section here up at the top, it's the best way to illustrate that. So I have all my teaching weeks, and I have consolidation week and the Christmas break in there. And finally, assessments and support material sections, which I'll come back to. But you'll also see that your existing materials are already still there. They're just hidden from students. So that this means you can drag your activities to the corresponding week, because you probably are working from a topics layout, and there you can just move them to the appropriate week and refactor them as you need. Each of the sections is split up in the same way. So if we look at the first week, I have the titles and the supporting text, which tells you what you should include in those sections, and we'll go into this in detail. But it's important to kind of have a look at this kind of guidance first. So it's broken down into a weekly introduction of tasks, a group collaboration activity, and further reading extension activity. So that will exist in all of the sections down your modules. I'll put the second one open. They look the same. So if we explore that now with an example in mind, so our preview module, you will see at the top under the weekly introduction, this first section is the guided self-study. So this is you're guiding students to do a particular set of tasks, but the students will conduct those tasks in their own time, whenever works for them. We really encourage you to have a text description of what you ask the students to do, but also really importantly, because it's self-directed study, please include a video as well. As a piece of best practice, I found adding the video last is most useful, because you'll have clear in your head what you expect the students to do, and the text description really acts as a script for that video. But because students are coming to it on their own, a welcome video really kind of helps. It makes it feel more personal. It kind of it's not students working on their own, that they are working to a task that's been set to them by a person. It's really worth doing. I'll just highlight to you how easy it is to create those videos. If edit this, is that a question?
Sorry to interrupt you, Mike. We're getting a bit of interference here, I think, from people who aren't muted. So I didn't want you to get broken up. So just again, can everybody mute their microphones? I can see Karina, I think, and Marina. It says Karina. Or Mike can mute everybody and me.
Yeah, that's exactly. Participants. Okay, I think if I stop sharing, I can do that really quickly. Moodle. There we go. And so you're all muted, and then you can come back in if you need. Not a problem at all. So share. Okay, I'll go back to sharing my screen. So I want to show you how quick and easy it is to add a welcome video in a section. So if you, with editing switched on, if you edit the label which corresponds to the weekly introduction, you will see in your text editor at the top of the page this video icon, and it's a very, very straightforward video icon. You press the button, you're prompted to start the video recording, and then accept that you're okay with that recording. So it's 3 buttons and you're done, and then it will insert that into the page for you. So really, really straightforward. You get a bit of a knack for it the more you do it. After my first 2 or 3, I was personally very confident with it. It's very straightforward, but it is really important to give students that feel of kind of friendliness to the module. So also in this weekly introduction, so this is the self-guided study. It's also where you would deliver your recorded lecture material or taught sessions. And we'd really encourage you to do this via a Moodle book, because if you just upload a 1-hour lecture, students will dip off quite quickly. Their engagement and their interest will wane. So what we said is, if you create a Moodle book, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second, because it's very straightforward. Create natural breaks within your sessions, but they should, I've put down 15 minutes here, but they should actually be somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes, and put that recorded section within a chapter of the book. And that just really keeps students on task a bit more, that they can see that it's not actually a 1 hour recording to watch. It's a number of shorter recordings. They can go off and do something else and come back. They don't have to do it all at once. And it'll also mean that you can build activities in between if you want to clarify a point or direct them to a useful website which helps illustrate the point. So breaking that content down into manageable chunks is really important. As I say, I'll just show you how to create a book, because we have some feedback from people that are concerned that's overly technical. It really isn't. If I press the Add Activity or Resource button, I can then choose Book from the bottom of the page. So I'll create my book like that. I'll give it a name. So it really needs and then my book is created. I'm then asked for a chapter, so that the chapter titles are really those topics that you've broken your lecture down into. So I'm just going to put topic 1, and then in brackets I'll put that this video is 8 minutes long. So it's very motivational for students. Like I say, it's only an 8-minute video, and they can do other tasks in between. If they're interrupted at home, they can just jump back in where they left off. It's very easy to use this icon to drop in the embedded video link that is provided to you. We now have access to a new recording piece of software called Panopto, which you will have access to in the next couple of weeks. And that's really straightforward. It's really been designed to make recording lectures and talk sessions very straightforward. I'll just point you towards some support resources so you can have a look in advance of that being released. But when you have a look at these resources, you'll see that it is a very straightforward system. You can split videos, you can add questions, but it's very intuitive. So support.panopto.com. So I take that embed link from my recorded video, I pop it in here, and I press save, and that's it. It really is that straightforward to break your content down into those sections. But it is key to kind of keeping students engaged, shorter rather than long and very detailed. We'd encourage you to include your slides that you use, if you use those, as an accompanying piece of material for students. If you've included a detailed image, or we've linked to another website, I often find myself, I want to go back through those materials and kind of hone in on them and then kind of read around the subject. But if you include the slides, it makes that possible for students. We'd also encourage you to include core reading in this section, so link to the TALIS reading list or a particular book within it, as part of that initial kind of self-study. And importantly, to make sure students have done the self-study, and really to gauge how well they've understood the terms and concepts you've communicated, we'd really encourage you to include a knowledge check activity. You can do that in a number of ways. The most straightforward way would be to create a Moodle forum and ask an open question of, what did you find most challenging in this week's materials? So you get a feel for what most students struggled with, and it gives you the opportunity to recap that during the group collaboration activity. There's a number of ways of doing knowledge check activities. We have a number of sessions this week going into that in detail, so I won't labour the point. But you can do it via a Google form. You can ask right or wrong questions with an open question at the end. You can use Nearpod or as I say, a Moodle forum or a Moodle quiz to deliver that. So please have a look at the programme and come to the session on knowledge checks if you want to explore that in more detail. But it really is key to establishing whether students have understood and gained the knowledge you wanted them to in this first section, so that when you come together, you can recap that if necessary. So I'll hand over to Amy now, who's going to talk about the group collaboration section. Just move my slides on a bit.
That's great, thank you, Mike. There are a couple of questions in the chat about Panopto. If you want to have a look there.
Yes.
Okay, so our group collaboration activity. So basically, the template is no more complicated than what we're showing you. It means you're in weekly format, and it follows that pattern of your introduction, which we're recommending as a video, and all of the kind of the conceptual, the resources, the reading, any lecture clips, the bits that get across the particular topics for that week are the first thing. And then you can move through a knowledge check activity into the collaboration activity. So this is where, with the introduction of those face-to-face hours, it can get confusing. So I just want to try to kind of clear that up a bit. So the collaboration activity is kind of your seminar activity. So it might be that you're having small group tutorials, or you would normally have a seminar. You might still have that seminar because you've had the chance to timetable the hours for it. And that's what's been decided for your course, in which case you can do something in the collaboration activity which precedes that, in terms of a very simple forum discussion or a couple of questions or a quiz. You can do something in that space which will add to that seminar, doesn't need to replace it. So it complements what you're doing as face-to-face. So your collaboration activity will be happening in your contact time, and those hours, whether that activity is done in the VLE or done in the room, is exactly the same in terms of contact hours. However, if we do find that we either don't have contact hours for a module because your course may have decided to allocate them separately, or we are back in a lockdown situation where the face-to-face element is removed, that is where that collaboration space comes to life, because that is the bit where you do the interaction, the discussion, the group work, anything that is that active kind of learning, discussing all of the information that's been given in that week in that first kind of topic block. So we're kind of advising, in terms of planning, just I think to help people keep their sanity and not feel like they're duplicating. You almost want to plan in that template and think about your contact time, but be kind of aware that if needed, you could pretty much teach your curriculum from that week by maybe adding a bit more in terms of collaboration if there's no face-to-face. So there's lots of creative ways to use that space. There's forums, there's group discussion activities. You can give over the collaboration activity to a particular group of students to lead for a week. So they take a week each. So it's really up to you how you use it. But I think for me that's the active learning, that's the seminar engagement and the unpicking of the concepts that have been delivered first. Okay, I'll hand back to you, Mike.
No problems. Okay, thank you very much. I've just answered a few questions about Panopto. I didn't get through all of them. I got down as far as who owns the copyright for Panopto video, and that the university does, as it does for all teaching resources, I believe. But it's certainly not Panopto who own the rights to our videos. It's very much ours, even though they are hosted in the cloud as the editing tools are. Okay, so the next section within the template, I'll pop over to the Moodle course we were working from, because that's the best way to illustrate this. The final section in any given week is for further reading extension activities, and that's for links, resources that push students past the taught materials and really encourage students to become independent learners. You want to encourage students to kind of get a deeper understanding of the materials by looking for themselves and looking past the materials. So any of those links, I would say would appear down here, but it's possibly the most straightforward section. I would just also say that for the group collaboration activity, we'd see that the group collaboration activity is really where students see other faces, hear other voices. It's very much synchronous, whether that's face-to-face or online. So if it's online, please post a link to the synchronous activities, so the WebEx discussion, for instance, or Google Meet, but also please provide a recording of that session so that students that can't attend or want to recap a certain point, that they can have access to that as a recording. Okay. One other section to mention is so I'll go back to the template, is the assessments and support materials section. So that's after all the teaching weeks, but it's a space for you to provide the actual assessments themselves, which are bubbled to the baseline assessment tab at the top of the course, which I'll show you in a second. It's a good space for ECF documentation, or good examples of assignments that have been submitted in the past, rubrics, and things that really kind of support the students through the assessment process. Links to services, which, like the Maths Cafe, for instance, would be well housed in this section. But where students will see a lot of their assessments is under the assessments tab at the top of the page, by tagging your assessments as summative assessments. They get bubbled to the top, so they're always front and center and available to them. But this link, the assessment support materials link, will take them down to that fuller section of materials. So if you talk to your online course developer, they can walk through that process. It's very, very straightforward. But that's the last part really of the template. So I'll come back to my slides so I can find out where we are. So we are halfway through. Okay, so we offer two template formats. One that's very signposted, and it is really designed to kind of for people who haven't taught online before, to kind of give you those real kind of key mechanisms for delivering content. And another one which is more which it has very little guidance in it, because you feel very confident in that zone already. But what you'll find is, if you go into the text editor throughout Moodle, so on the main course page or within an activity such as a book or a quiz, you'll find an ink drop icon, and that gives you access to styled headers, which you can use on the main module level page. So those three headers, introduction, group collaboration activity, and further reading, are available there. You can adapt those if the wording doesn't quite fit. So if it's more a tutorial discussion or a seminar, then please feel free to adjust those headings as you see fit. But you also have access to other headings which might be useful: large group, small group activity, core resources, and assessment guidance, along with an agnostic guidance box which is paired up with each of these headings. So you can very much mix and match however you see fit. If it doesn't quite work for you, adjust it so that it does. Those three headers are really kind of a best steer for best practice of if you we were asked for a solid steer of what can I do to teach online effectively from teaching block 1, and that flipped delivery of those three sections is a really good steer in that direction. But please feel free to experiment and adjust. You will also find access in that same drop-down menu to activity level guidance boxes. So if you're including a lot of text within a book or a web page that you create, you probably want to signpost calls to action that you want students to do. So if there's an activity you want them to include the activity box and tell them what the activity is. If you want them to watch a video, use the watch box, or if you want them to reflect on their practice after a session, use the reflect box. So those really just break up and signpost those key things that you want students to do, and we've mainly kind of designed those to be used at activity level, so within books or forums or quizzes, just to highlight what you'd like students to do. And they've gone over quite well with staff so far. I probably should have said this a bit earlier, but I just wanted to pass on how we came to the template in terms of how we researched it. We looked at a number of institutions. We looked at the Open University. They've been teaching online for decades. We spoke to our faculty of ICGS, or our department of ICGS, the Institute of Criminal Justice Studies, who deliver a lot of distance modules. And we also spoke to academics that had been teaching online from lockdown in April. And via that conversation, we got a lot of student feedback about what they felt worked and what they felt didn't work. We have factored that in to the structure of the template. So I personally like to thank Roger Bai in Business and Law, who is very, very approachable and forthcoming with advice in that area, and it kind of opens some doors talking to other staff about student feedback. So I just wanted to kind of express how that feedback has kind of influenced the template. Okay, cool. So we've now got to the point where so we have. I think this is a point where I hand over to Amy to talk about the blend between face-to-face and talk sessions and kind of where we are with that in terms of the university guidance, I guess.
That's great, thanks, Mike. Yeah, so it's just to reiterate part of the discussion that's been happening in the sector around contact hours, and we know from the QAA that the codes that we use to kind of mark whether things are a lecture or a seminar don't really translate into this kind of blended approach. So you don't necessarily have the option to say this is going to be an online discussion or this is going to be an online recorded lecture. But in terms of your contact hours and what you're delivering, if you imagine a distance learning course who never have any face-to-face contact, as some of you may have experience teaching on, they would have a lecture, and that lecture could be captured in multiple clips. It could also be captured in a piece of reading or in a facilitated discussion. And it's important to understand that these activities swap out that contact time. So if you don't have a contact time scheduled, you'd be thinking, okay, so I would roughly be delivering a couple of hours in a seminar for this week. I'm going to ask the students to spend, approximately X amount of time contributing to an online task, discussion, collaboration. They're also going to be in an online workshop, which might be an hour, because necessarily longer than that is quite difficult. So it's just to think about the equivalent rather than the adding on. And some of you may find that you actually have it easier in terms of structure because you've lost your large lectures, so you can provide that lecture content here in the template, but then you still have your seminar, so you can follow up quite easily in that face-to-face session. So we are getting some questions coming through about how you do practical lab works. There is a lot of guidance out there about swapping alternatives for practical. Obviously, it's very difficult you can't create a lab environment, but sometimes it may involve a bit of a rejig of the curriculum. We do have expertise in VR and Labster in the university, and we're happy to put you in touch with experts or to talk to you about alternatives for some of those more tricky modules. There's normally a creative solution to be found here. So with H5P, that is a tool in Moodle which helps you to build in interactivity. I'd really recommend having some training on it if you haven't seen it. It sounds a bit daunting. It's really not. It's quite an easy way to pull in things which can be quizzes or small drag and drop activities, to edit a video and put some animations and questions and prompts in. So if you wanted maybe one thing to do, if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed and you wanted one thing to focus on, I would probably say that in terms of Moodle, H5P is a good place to go to. Would you agree, Mike?
I would, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's really really easy to create them, but also the support guides are very, very straightforward as well. So we can give access to the website, which will walk you through all the available interactive elements. Yeah, so it's just a case of really choosing something you think will illustrate the point you're trying to make, and then working through the guide. It's really, really straightforward and really engaging for students. I was just having a look at one of the questions about seminar groups. And it came up in the previous session. So if you have 20 seminar groups, do you have to create a link for each of them? Will the students see all of those? I think is the crux of the question. you can use Moodle's grouping functionality to restrict activities to set groups. And Tom Langston, who's in the chat, runs a very good session on this, which you can find in the academic development calendar. But really, students will only see, if you use that functionality, they'll only see the group they need to contribute to. They won't see a long list of them. And as an academic, you'll get dropped down, which lets you jump to the particular group. So I encourage you to have a look at the calendar to answer that one. It's got some really good content on it. I'm going to go back and just show, and actually just following from Amy's point about H5P, here's an activity that was created in H5P just to illustrate the blend and the type of activities you can use within your modules. This, as I say, was created in H5P. It's 2 images, which has got a slider which you add over the top. So the first one is fully online. Here's some examples of what you could include in each of those sections to give you an idea of what to start with. If you feel intimidated by that list and you don't want to do all of them, don't. Just pick the easiest one for each section, which would be a welcome video, a Moodle book for your recordings, use WebEx for your group collaboration activity online, and then link to some websites in the further reading section. It can be as simple as that. But as you want to mix it up a bit, you can start to include some other activities which give the students variety. And then following on to the engagement questions we've been asked, really, if you want to engage students, you need to get them to collaborate, you need to get them to talk and to take part in those activities. And it's also important to mix up your activities so they're not the same every week, so they don't get bored with the same process. You need to keep them on their toes a little bit, but you can do that gradually as you become confident with those activities. If I drag the slider over this, you'll see some other examples of what you can include in each section, using quizzes for knowledge checks, for instance, or using Panopto for your videos, which we'd highly recommend. But importantly, if you see this middle section, the group collaboration activity, so fully online, you'd use a technology such as WebEx or Google Meet to deliver that. But when we get to face-to-face, this is the section where you can adjust the blend to help deliver face-to-face sessions. So this section could be delivered in lab space or in one of the studio spaces. If you're able to do that, but it could quite easily be flipped back to an online activity if lockdown interrupts that process. Okay, so just a little visual to show you that. Okay, we're coming towards the end. So I just want to, I'll leave those slides up, this slide up, because it links to a number of useful sites. There is the link for the Preparing to Teach in a Blended Learning Context, which is available there. The e-learning tools site has lots of guides for some of the tools that I've mentioned. I've mentioned the Moodle book. You'll find contact details for your local online course developers as well, so it'll be well worth your time there. We have also developed 6 online modules, which you can find at the following link. They're not very long. They're nice and digestible. The first of which is the Principles of Online Design, which covers this content in more detail and walks through the process of using the template and how it works. We also cover active blended learning, so taking that process further. If you want to engage with students, as a number of you have asked for, we run a module on online communities and communication. So some real practical tips there for engaging students. And you'll also find one on quality, diversity, and inclusion. And as I said, there's 6 modules. If there's just the module that's available to you, but it explores some of these things in greater detail. I think that's all the content we're going to deliver. So if anyone wants to ask any more questions, we'll fill some of those.
There are a couple in there about, so Ben's asked about uploading Camtasia videos to Panopto. As far as I know, you can do that, can't you? So you can upload and then it will give you a share link, so that's quite easy. And Steve has asked, can you upload Camtasia to Moodle? That you use Panopto for your screen capture, and that will give you a kind of is it an embed code, or does it give you like a hyperlink?
It gives you an embed code, yeah.
Embed code, so you just embed that into the editor, and that will link students to that content. So quite straightforward and quite quick to use.
I just want to follow up that point, that we're going to do that programmatically as well. So all the Camtasia videos that already exist, we're going to migrate those into Panopto. So you'll get once those are processed, you'll get an email saying your new video is available on Panopto. So you don't have to do that yourself; it will be done for you.
Absolutely. And Val has asked a little bit about how we can track engagement with the H5P resources. So I know that we have got some metrics around engagement. Is that as granular as H5P? H5P?
I would say so that there's a report in Moodle that's called the course participation report. If you go to the cog icon and then reports course participation, you'll see a list of all your activities on your module. So if you've got a H5P activity in there, it'll give you a yes or no whether students have gone in and looked at it. So you'll be able to see whether students have. It's not the level of engagement, but it is whether they've actually opened it and had a look. So you'll get a very quick flavour of whether a lot of students have accessed it or they haven't.
That's great. I'm just putting the links that are on the slides into the chat for you. So that one is our main kind of guidance site. The next one coming up here is our Moodle training modules. The good thing about those modules is they're kind of modelling what this looks like, so you can see what it looks like in practice. It's quite overwhelming to think about this in terms of your whole year ahead and what's going to happen. Having worked with this template, I'd recommend kind of maybe stepping away from Moodle and planning and thinking through your weeks, what you've already got and what you do, and then perhaps come to Moodle and build it, so that you're not trying to build your weeks fitting in with Moodle. You want to build it the way you want to teach it, and then make Moodle fit around you. I think that's probably the easiest way to describe it. If there are any last questions, we can take those, or alternatively you can email elearn@port.ac.uk for individual training. Okay, I think we're about there. If there aren't any questions. You okay, Mike?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming along.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for your time today, and we'll see you again soon.